to another Python programming tutorial, and today we are talking all about conditional statements. Now, if you haven't watched my video on comparison operators, please go check that out. Super important to what we'll be discussing here. You must know that. And by the way, I am Coach Anthony at Esports Players Club. We are an esports academy located in Tampa, Florida. Feel free to check us out on our website, www.esportsplayersclub.com. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the video here. So this video is all about conditional statements. And the traditional form of conditional statement is if something is true or false, then we will do an action. So you'll do something here, right? This is the traditional layout of what is known as a conditional statement. In other programming languages, for example, Java, it's if, you'll have a condition here. So, JavaScript, then you will do something here. Right, this is JavaScript, but that is the general layout. In Lua, it's if something here, then do something here, right? And this is again just the general layout for most conditional statements and how they are done. Now, let's go ahead and look at an example here. So, if true, colon, print true, right? So true will only print if the condition written here comes back true. And when you do conditional statements in Python, you always have this colon here, right? So if I run this, since this is true, it will return true. But if I change this to false, it will not run what's written in here because the condition has not been met, as you can see, right? Now, something to keep in mind when you write code in Python, whenever you have a conditional statement or functions or whatever, if you're experienced in programming, you have to make sure things are indented. Notice that Python will not recognize this as the condition of the statement here if you don't have an indentation. And it's very important to make sure indentations are there, especially if you have multiple statements going on inside of each other. Okay? Now, another important concept here is this value must always be a Boolean. Always be a Boolean. It will either return, yes, this is true, or no, this is false. Right? And this is where comparison operators will really come into play. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at an example here. Let's say I have a variable representing player health. Okay, and let's say that is equal to input from the user. Okay, now whenever you take in input from the user, it always comes as a string. We haven't done typecasting yet, but this is a nice little preview of what typecasting is. Typecasting is when you take one data type and you make it into another data type. In this case, I'm expecting the input from the user to be a number, and I don't want that number to be a string. I want it to be registered as an int value or an integer, right? So let's go ahead and let the user know that. So print enter a number for player health, right? This will let the user know that they need to enter a number for the player health, and then they'll enter a number here. So if player health is greater than 20, we're going to print healthy. Right, and then go ahead. And there you go. And again, notice Python did it for me, but I have an indent here. Very important that you have those indents to indicate that this is part of this conditional statement. Here's the condition. Again, from the conditionals or the comparison operators video, this will always return a Boolean, either true or false. Let's go ahead and look here. When I run my program, it's going to ask me for player health. I'm going to put in 50, and it says you are healthy. If I run this again, go ahead and delete the console, and I don't enter in that, let's say I enter in 10, it prints nothing. And that is the whole idea of a conditional statement. It only runs specific parts of your program based on a condition, right, of a Boolean. Something will either be true or false, right? So, speaking on that, you can also have multiple different conditional statements embedded in here. So if player health is here, is greater than, well, if it's not greater than 20, then if it's less than 15, I can print something else. And excuse me, forgot my semicolon here. I can print very low HP, right? And let's say this is 10. So if it's greater than 20, you're healthy. If it's less than 10, you'll get the message very low HP. And again, notice how things are indented here, right? It must be indented like this with the tab, or else you will get an error. So make sure again that you're tabbing things over just like so. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this now. So I go ahead and run this. It asks me to enter in a number here. Let's say I enter in 100. It's going to print healthy, just like before. But if I enter in 5 this time, it's going to print, oh, excuse me, I made a small error here. This should be right here. My mistake there. Again, if I run 5 here, if I enter in 5, it's going to print very low HP, right? So in this case, it never ran the first condition here, so that's why when it was indented here, it didn't work, which is a great example of what I was just talking about, is making sure you have everything indented correctly here. So if the player's health was less than 20, in this case, it's going to print low health. And if the player's health is less than 10, it's going to print very low HP. So this is a good example of, again, a conditional inside of conditional. This time it's written correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and input a number here. Let's say I put 5. It prints low health, low health. And then it checks again, and it says it's less than very low HP. So this is the idea of a conditional inside of a conditional, right? Now, the next thing I want to show you with conditional statements is using elif and else. So let's say that if the player's health is less than 20, we're going to print low health, right? Elif is the same as another conditional statement, right? So if this first condition isn't met, then I can check for another condition. So if player health is greater than 50, colon, print very healthy. Right? In this case, when I go ahead and run my program here, if I type in 100, it's going to print very healthy, right? And if I print in 10, it's going to print low health. And this is an example of an elif, which essentially runs this condition after this condition was not met. So this will return false, this will return true, so it will run this statement here, right? The last thing that we have to keep in mind when we write conditional statements is the else statement. Else will always run. So if nothing else was true, right, if none of these were true, so if the player's health wasn't less than 20 or it wasn't greater than 50, then we're going to print need to heal. So in this case, it's going to check my input. If the health is greater than 50, if the health is less than 20, it'll print low health. If the health is greater than 50, it'll print very healthy. If neither of these are met, then in all other instances, it will print need to heal, right? And again, make sure you have your indents correct here. This would not be correct. Make sure everything is indented correctly. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this example here, and I'm going to go ahead and make this lowercase h because it's bothering me. So I'm going to go ahead and run this program. And again, if I enter in 20 here, or let's say 10, it's going to print low health, right? If I enter in 51, it's going to print very healthy. And if I enter in a number anywhere in between that, 35, it's going to say need to heal, right? And that's the whole idea here. Even if I put like -1, for example, we'll say low health, right? And this is the idea of using conditional statements. Again, it only runs what's here based on a condition given up here. This condition must always be a Boolean, and you can always get a Boolean by using comparison operators. Okay, so I hope this video helped. Let me know if you have any questions on these conditional statements, and I hope to see you in the next one.